we're all here, call this meeting of the Heritage Commission to order. Moving on to the agenda, we'll address the minutes of the December 21 meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, or is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business, public hearing items none, administrative items, review of the 2018 Heritage Commission Annual Report by the City Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. This is a familiar item. You see this during January of each year, where the Heritage Commission and other city boards gives a summary of their activities and accomplishments to the City Commission. And being a city board, we developed this listing for you, and it encapsulates the various activities over the previous year with the objectives of having goals at the end of those. But it does provide you with the membership, the day of appointments, as well as a listing of the goals and the design review cases and nominations you've heard over the previous year. Basically, the Heritage Commission conducted 2 regular meetings and 3 special meetings during 2018 and reviewed 4 certificate of appropriateness applications for alterations on historic structures, as well as 2 requests from the State Historic Preservation Office for a letter of support from the Heritage Commission and the City Commission on 2 National Register nominations. Those were for the Norton Apartments at 1111 and 1115 East Iron, and the former St. John's Hospital at 139 North Penn. We did hear back on the Norton Apartments. They were entered on the National Register in March of 2018. The State Preservation Office contacted us and said the St. John's Hospital had been placed on the Register of Historic Kansas Places, which is the first step on going to the National Register, and the National Register review is still pending. Generally, we receive word back sooner than that, but I've been in discussion with the preservation consultants working with the applicant, and they still think the application is viable, and they're working through that. They're Rosen Preservation out of Kansas City, Missouri. As far as the other accomplishments, the Heritage Commission, city staff, and Smoky Hill Museum worked with Jerry Klinger, who's president of the Jewish American Society for Historic Preservation during the previous year, and he proposed an interpretive marker to honor August Bonday, who was a Jewish American immigrant who figured prominently in the promotion of the Kansas Territory as a free state in 1861. He then moved to his family here in 1866, and for the next 42 years lived in Salina. He was also a 32nd degree Mason. The commemorative marker you'll see on the screen there was donated by the Jewish American Society as well as the local Masonic Lodge. And the Smoky Hill Museum did establish a place for that by doing some site work, so it's actually in a very prominent location on the corner there of 8th Street and, 8th Street and Iron Avenue. That ceremony was held at Smoky Hill Museum on August 30th and was well attended. We have no nominations for new local landmarks or historic districts at this point. In education, the City Planning Department maintains membership for the Heritage Commission in the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, and the Kansas Preservation Alliance. So we do work with those activities. As far as membership information, John Reynolds was elected the chair of the Heritage Commission on October 31st, 2018, and Dave Silverman was elected to the office of vice chair. Dan Vappa serves presently as our Planning Commission representative on the Heritage Commission and is going to continue to do so during 2019. The Heritage Commission is a 7-member board. It currently has 6 appointed members. Judy Lilly's first appointment term expired in 2018. She wished not to be reappointed, so we do have an opening there for a historian, and we do advertise from our city clerk on these openings. As far as goals and objectives for 2019, we're receptive. If you see something that isn't covered here that you'd like to have staff pursue and bring to you, you certainly can. But we do want to continue assisting property owners who are nominating their properties for the State National Register to obtain state rehabilitation tax credits. That is working on a couple of projects currently, and we expect to see more as we go along. We did mention going through a preservation award and recognition program. We did this previously in the Heritage Mission, ending in 2009. And we are willing to work with you to, with another program this year because we think we have some excellent candidates. We are working also to have a standardized review process for placing historical and commemorative markers on the site. We hope that the Bondi marker is one of many that we can attract as well as locate to honor the community's history. And also as items, we would like to develop formal design guidelines to assist the Heritage Mission in review of our residential historic districts and local landmarks. Currently, we use the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, and they're fairly general standards, but those are the ones our own guidelines derive from, and we feel those can be added to with a little effort. And we do want to develop additional information on the city's historic preservation program on the city website. So at this point, if you had a chance to look over the member information, if any of the information is outdated, we can certainly correct that at the end of the meeting. As far as attendance goes, if you see changes there that aren't reflected properly, you can certainly bring that to staff's attention as well. And as you do see encapsulated the descriptions of the various applications you've heard during 2018. So at this point, staff would stand for any questions or suggestions that the board may have on the report.
Any questions or comments?
Does it need a motion to approve?
It does require a motion and a second as far as approval. That allows us to forward that on to the City Commission at the end of January. So at the first week of February, that's when we present that to them. So
I'll make the motion.
I'm curious which ones I missed.
Been a motion to approve this, just forward on to the City Commission. Is there a second?
Oh, yeah, I'll second that. Yes.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, preliminary discussion items, 3.2, discussion of the 2019 Preservation Award Program.
Down the road a few times.
staff doesn't believe we're going to cover much new territory here, but we are planning to have the award event during the middle of May, which is Preservation Month from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So we do have a meeting coming up in April to fine-tune a presentation to them. But in the past, we've gone anywhere from 2 properties a year to as many as 5 or 6 a year that we would recognize at a ceremony during May. So it's one additional special meeting, but staff will do much of the work and preparation. What we'd like to do is see if you have any suggestions that you might have encountered since our previous meeting back in October on various candidates. And I can scroll through those that we've discussed before, as well as another suggestion on the Marymount College property here of Donnie Mars. He has done a very complex and extensive property to establish condominiums in the main structure of the administration building. And to do this, he built an underground garage under the old marker grounds for the college. And this was in their circular drive, this sunken garden. This is an after shot of the same garden looking forward. And the difference there is this has been raised up roughly 10 to 12 feet. to allow the sunken garden to have the underground parking below it. So that there was quite a bit of engineering to the property, as well as doing improvements to help condominiums owners to feel more at home on the grounds of the administration building. These are the balconies on the south side of the structure. We did look at those during 2007 and again in 2009, and these have been streamlined down. They've got their signatured railings, as well as the structures themselves tying back into the structure with various masonry trims and face brick as you go up. These are actually components that were assembled, but they were intended to replicate the exterior of the main building. We did mention a property down at the 200 block of South Santa Fe, and this was for a while a clothing store called the Paris Clothing. Back then, it was actually a red and white paint over the brick. So when this particular owner occupied the structure and took her chiropractic office and inhabited the ground floor, she chose to go back and refurbish the exterior of the building, take out some of the non-modern improvements, and this is the same look of the same building there, where they did have a masonry contractor come in, provide new surfacing on the bricks themselves, as well as the masonry joints. It's a very complex process of tuck pointing and painting, as well as establishing new stone sills and headworks where needed, where those have been damaged or weren't existing in the future. So, and this is a close-up of the ice cream shop that faces Iron Avenue, and this is at Stromberg's chiropractic office. This particular project is still on hold. This is Brett and Carity Robbins out of Brookville, and Brett Robbins runs a contracting company here, and he reached a certain point on the structure here and is now waiting for his city staff and the building services to work through some of the aspects on the property that were caused by it being occupied by apartments previously, but they are planning to restore that back to a single-family use, and then to market that. This is another view of the structure and the restoration process so far. We mentioned this at our last meeting, and this is actually an older shot than the building that actually has at the present point. It's gone back with a beige and a pumpkin color, which is much more striking than this, but we feel this is an example of someone going in and occupying a historic home and making themselves comfortable in it, rather than just improving it and moving on to the next one. So we believe this is an excellent project, and certainly you'll notice that as you go down Santa Fe Avenue. The owner is also working with us to have a circular drive in the front for letting off, because there's not much for a garage on the property now. And they have actually redone the mechanical system on that. The house existed up until recently without an air conditioning unit, and it had a warm gas and a water heating. We also mentioned the two properties at 730 and 734 South Santa Fe, and they were much in need of attention before William with Mays Construction took over that. In this case, the northernmost property, 730, did have a tree that was up against the cornice of the building, and that's since been remedied. This is the original condition of the property adjacent to the north. These were sold as a package to a Brett and Robert Pence, who's done most of the work in there, after the initial contractor and restored the two homes back to single-family use, and kept much of the original detail and charm of the two structures. This is where they reside in their house today. So, and this one here as well, we want to keep that one in. This one is done by Cecilia Perez back in so 2016 is when we worked with her. There was some occurring damage on the front porch there where these beams were actually coming down because of some of the weight on the masonry on the front of the house itself. So she did get an adequate mason to go in there, replace the beams over the entryway, as well as where needed in the back of the structure. This is the original construction of the structure where it's been kind of tacked on the rear over time. These are the concrete blocks that were a veneer on the property before, and this shows an after photograph of the property itself with a change of materials, but also something that keeps in scale on spirit with the original. And also on the rear of the property, they were able to reuse some of the original stone masonry foundation, and that's placed at the rear of the property. So at this point, we just brought those forward to you to see if you had driven by anything in the past 2 to 3 months that you thought might fit in with this, and we'll have the official selection of projects at our April meeting.
Anybody have any questions?
For clarification purposes, what's the difference between renovation and general maintenance?
Generally, renovation is something that's going to bring something back to more of what it had before, both in look and utility. Some renovations do modify original properties, and as long as those are kept in the same character of the structure, they don't injure the historic character of the property. Restoration is something where you go back with exactly the same materials, the same units, same finishes. So renovation is actually the first step down, where you're restoring utility by bringing up the various physical elements for utility again.
So if a house needs painting, that's not necessarily a renovation or restoration?
It is an ordinary maintenance or repair with like materials. Generally is approved by staff, and the Heritage Mission at this point doesn't review landscaping or changes in the rear yards of properties that are not visible from the street. A lot of what we see works into ordinary maintenance and repair, and those are actually just handled when the building permits themselves come in. We look at that as staff and then okay that permit to be issued based on that particular aspect. When something is more measurable than that, where they're not using original materials or something that looks like the original, then that's when we would bring that to you to look at as well.
I'm really appreciative of the work that's going on downtown in restoring the many of the storefronts. I know that the Jilka furniture store is broken up, and what location is currently with the gymnasium, the gym that's going in? And they're really trying to restore the original look to the front of the building, and they're going to try to preserve the paintings on the sides of that were originally on the sides of the buildings inside. So I don't know if we could recognize the efforts over there or not.
The projects themselves are coming to a close, so
Yep.
they would definitely be eligible and probably finished out by the time April comes. They're getting their inspections done this coming week, and that's for Jake Sharp Performance, where it's athletic and fitness center
Yep.
and training. And yes, they have gone back and taken some of the non-original storefronts, aluminum and glass storefronts, and replace that with something that's more in keeping with the historic character of the building. And we do note that little area, that's a small courtyard when you first enter, is something that brings a lot of utility to the building for them to have someplace to go out and relax, as well as set that particular building off on the block. So there were two buildings side by side. The smaller one has been fixed up for retail under the same project, and it's finished out now.
And another building that's reused, I don't know if it qualifies as historic, or it might just barely squeak by, but the Bank of America building, do you know, what's the construction date on that originally? What was the original construction date of the Bank of America building downtown? That's the KU Med School.
Sure. The
Mid-century design.
I'm still trying to picture that. There is the Sunflower Bank building, which is undergoing a renovation right now. To the north of that, on the rear of the old Bank of America building, that was originally or last the parking for the School of Medicine, but that was purchased by Blue Beacon, and then that was turned over as far as ownership, and then the city as a joint project went in and established that parking lot that now will be able to serve the field house, as well as the new alley entertainment center to the north, as well as nearby businesses. So that's a project that came about. The landscaping will be in the existing planters that you see there, but those will be planted off in the middle of spring and bring back some more trees and vegetation and a general look at that area. So it's the parking lot itself is done, the entranceways.
Well, I'm more interested in if the reuse and re-engineering of that structure would qualify for this commission if it's old enough, if it's, mid-century enough. Is it over 50 years old?
Oh, yeah. It was line of mercantile, and it was a Sears store before they built Sears Center on South Santa Fe.
No, I mean the Bank of America building?
Yeah, that building.
That's mid-century.
Then KP&L bought it after Sears. Yeah, there's been several reincarnations.
Okay.
Sure.
I might nominate that as an example of mid-century reuse.
And what about Maggie Gilliam's house? They put a lot of work into the outside of that. Is that eligible?
It would be, yes. It's in our historic districts, and I looked at that before for a fenced-in rear yard, and I would agree with you. There's been a lot of work on the exterior of that house that's been really remarkable.
And then the Story property.
Yes, and that one's the 746, which is the stick-style structure that's the beige and pumpkin now. I think both those are something that fit well in what we look at as criteria.
Anything else?
Well, could we discuss different categories then for the preservation awards? Maybe we could have residential and commercial.
I believe you could. There's no reason why we can't combine them in a single meeting, and we have on downtown projects in the past where those have been kind of springing on one another and bringing the whole district back to life. Certainly, we would like to have some residential properties as well as commercial properties, and Dr. Silver mentioned before there was a set of structures down on Fifth Street that's been refurbished on the outside and been returned to utility, and those are well crafted and handsome structures.
I'm not sure which ones we're talking about.
The old Jilka buildings
Oh,
on
the
Fifth
Joker
Street.
building. Oh, okay.
Sure.
Anything else, guys?
Nope.
Ladies? Okay, moving on to unfinished or other business, I would just like to say thank you for distributing the article on Mr. Bondi. That was a pleasure doing the research and learning about him and writing the article for the Scottish Rite Journal, and I appreciate the distribution.
Very welcome, and we appreciate your work on that.
Is there any other unfinished or other business we need to talk about?
No, not at this time.
Public forums, anybody else want to say anything? Well, everybody's jumping up all at once. If that's the case, then we are adjourned.
Good man.
Thank you.
Beat the 4:30 again.